Hello, this might really be the last bike test this year. Since Christmas is in a few days, it's 5 degrees, so this video won't be the longest bike presentation I've done this year. But let this be enough of an introduction. I will try to quickly say everything. However, what is certain to be left out is the packaging, since it was so cold that I assembled the bike in the garage. Indeed, there is not much about the packaging. It's not something too complicated, since even the seat is already installed. All you have to do when the bike arrives is attach the pedal, attach the stem. You attach the handlebar, put in the front wheel, and it's basically done. Obviously, the usual checks like bolt check, brake check, gear check are necessary. But if those are done, then you are basically ready. You can charge the battery, pump up the tire, and go cycling. So that's the packaging and assembly. Let's quickly dive into that. What can this bike do? Those who watch my channel might have noticed that this brand has been with me this year, namely the Polluno Plus. This bike is now the Polluno Plus, and there's really not much difference between the two bicycles. The only thing is that the Polluno, that was a mountain bike, and this is a city bike, but the foundation of both bikes is entirely the same. Essentially the same frame, everything is the same. The only difference is this is a city bike, and there isn't horizontal bar in the frame, easy to get on, has a large luggage rack. The wheels are bigger, but otherwise the drive, the display, the system built into it, the brakes, the shock absorbers, and everything else is the same as that bike. So the Polluno, very important information here, pay attention, that for SQ bicycles, the plus sign indicates that the bike has a torque sensor where there is no plus. There you get a pedal sensor or speed sensor bicycle. But since this has a plus, it's a torque sensor bicycle. And maybe this is the most important feature of this bike, that it's a torque sensor. And of course, you know well that torque sensor bicycles are much more pleasant to use than pedal sensors, because it's not just about starting to pedal and the motor pushing with maximum force, but there is electronics in it that senses how much force you put into pedaling. And based on this, it adds power. So the harder you pedal, the more power the bicycle will provide, achieving a much smoother, much more pleasant operation. But what can this bicycle do? Because there are a few things worth mentioning. The first thing is the front suspension, which is hydraulic. And this hydraulic suspension looks like on one side can be locked and unlocked, while on the other side there is a pre-tension adjustment knob. With this we can adjust the hardness as it is hydraulic. This is not a plain suspension. It cannot bottom out as easily. It operates much more smoothly than a simple cheap suspension. Obviously, this shock absorber is not designed for professional racing. In fact, the manufacturer shows this. There is a sticker here. And on this sticker, you can see they warn us that we should not use this bicycle, this shock absorber, for jumping on dirt tracks and so on. So obviously this bike is not meant for that, but I think you can see that from its shape. What else is interesting? The rear motor is the next really interesting thing, because it's a Bafang motor. Anyone who is familiar with electric bicycles knows that Bafang produces very, very good products. Reliable, very strong, very pleasant structures can be assembled. Well, this Bafang motor, it is 250 watts, but its peak power is 900 watts and its torque is 45 Newton meters. Now, the motor has 45 Newton meters from 250 watts. So let's just say that's not a bad value. Next, the brake, well, unfortunately, in the usual way, although they are disc brakes, we get mechanical disc brakes. The discs are not too large either, but this is a city bicycle, not intended for sports. And since we're talking about a city bicycle, really, in my opinion, this disc size is appropriate and can provide adequate braking effect to ensure that we can stop. I haven't talked about the capacity of the battery yet. The system is 36 volts and 20 per hour the capacity, which means we get 720 watt hours, which for a torque sensor bicycle means that the range will be long enough to go quite a distance on a single charge. In this cold weather, I couldn't fully use up the charge of the battery during the test, but the manufacturer says there is enough charge for 120 kilometers. Obviously, this seems a bit much, but if we don't want to constantly use the fifth gear, use the assistance if we are not continuously going uphill, so using it under normal conditions, then we can definitely count on half of that, as this is a torque sensor bicycle. And after all, 60 kilometers is not a short distance with one charge. What is also important, we have a light in the front and we have a light at the back too. The rear light is connected to the electrical system, so it doesn't need a separate battery or anything, so that's a great thing. What's also important is that we have a luggage rack, a very strong luggage rack, where you can also attach bags on the sides, and there are mounting points. And the manufacturer says it can support a load of 25 kilograms. So you can even transport a child in this, or you can put larger packages on it. It's also very important that the bicycle comes equipped from the factory with both a front and a rear mudguard. These are plastic mudguards, but they look relatively good, and I think there won't be any problems with them for a long time. Fortunately, their size is good. They also have fenders here in the back and in the front, and they protect against water very well. I tested it in wet conditions and no water splashed up at all. So it did its job well. We're almost at the end, as only the handlebars and the dashboard remain. Here there's an interesting thing that I definitely have to show. The main point is really that this handlebar, as you can see, is a city handlebar. It is very well tilted back, making the bicycle pleasant and comfortable to handle while holding the handlebar safe and stable to ride. It doesn't want to tip over, it doesn't veer to the right or left, so even with one hand, this handlebar is really very, very good. I don't think there's a problem with this either. What's interesting is that they managed to mount this instrument panel, this button panel, upside down on the handlebars, which in my opinion might be because the cable is quite short. And if we had installed it the other way, the cable would have been stretched in one direction. The real disadvantage of this is that with this button, we can turn on the dashboard, which is fine. This upward button is used to increase the speeds, the assistance upwards, and with the other downwards. But since this button is upside down, thus the function is reversed, and with the down button we go up, and with the up button we go down. That's it. This is the only interesting thing, or let's say the oddity about this bike. It makes it a bit like this. The thing will have a flashy character, but there's nothing else. And really, well, this shouldn't have been done. In my opinion, this shouldn't have been done this way. If they had added 5 more centimeters of cable, the problem would be solved. What's also important is that it has a bell on it, integrated into the brake lever, front brake lever, rear brake lever. We have a simple 7-speed Shimano shifter. You know, this is the usual touring shifter. This is the absolute bottom shelf. But since the drive is in the rear wheel here, we always mention it. In the case of the drive in the rear wheel, the large torque is not transferred by the pedal and chain from the foot, but the motor assistance, so it's not such a problem if this gear is not the best, highest quality piece. The dashboard, by the way, is identical to that on the other ESKUTE bicycle. This was also on the Polluno Plus. Well, I can't say much about it other than you won't find any information on it besides how far you've gone. The charge is visible in 5 levels. You can see the speed and you can see if the light is on. That's about it. And well, in sunlight it's not very visible, let's leave it at that, but it's not the worst I've encountered among Chinese bicycles. Time goes by and I haven't talked about what it was like to use this bike. Well, I have to say that there wasn't much excitement in it. It's about like my car, which is a Ford, and it takes me from A to B, but it doesn't provide much excitement. And this bike, it does exactly this. Since it is a city bicycle, it doesn't need to provide much excitement. On the contrary, it should rather provide calmness. So its role is for us to be able to go to the city for shopping, to be able to go for the child to preschool, etc., etc., etc. So this doesn't need to be exciting, it needs to be safe. And this bicycle is safe. It looks good too. In my opinion, obviously many will say it's a women's bicycle. But in my view, it is not a women's bicycle. It's a unisex bicycle because if we load up the trunk, it would be terribly difficult to get on it while having to lift your leg over a loaded trunk or a child's head. So it's really great that there's no tube here. This is a city bike. It's for you to simply grab it. You swing your leg over, sit on it and ride. One thing is missing from it, which I do miss a little. It would have made sense to put mounting points on both sides of the fork. And then you could put a front rack on it. But there are many aftermarket options available, even those with higher load capacity like the rear rack. And then you'd have a good large storage space in the front too. You put the child in the back and the luggage in the front. But with this bicycle, this option is not provided. It is very important that the factory set maximum assistance of 25 kilometers per hour cannot be unlocked. So this bicycle only goes 25 kilometers, assists up to a speed of 25 kilometers per hour with the motor. This is an EU regulation, of course, and it is also important that there is an EPAC sticker on it, and this currently, it confirms that the bicycle complies with EU standards. By the way, it mentions from summer that the load capacity is 100 kilograms, while the specification states 120 kilograms. Probably both values are usable, so if you weigh 120 kilograms, I think you can still safely buy it. I don't believe there would be any difference or any problem with this bicycle. Well, now I've pretty much said everything about the bike. Just a few words about what it was like to ride it. Well, I didn't go too far with it because it was quite cold and I was rather chilly, so this was a relatively short bike test. In any case, I tried to test it under urban conditions and not just on flat roads, but also on inclines, as there are some in our area. Relatively larger inclines are present here within the city too. And to my greatest surprise, that I was able to pedal up even the relatively large steep incline without difficulty, without much effort. True, at gear 5. True, I did shift back the gears, but I went up quite steep slopes without any effort. So if you live in a place with slopes, not big mountains, just small ones, you can confidently buy this bike if there are hills, because you'll be able to use it there too and you won't exhaust yourself. I was already familiar with the front suspension from another used bicycle. It worked very well on that one too, and it works very well on this one, as it absorbs road bumps really well. And even with my weight, which fortunately is now under 100 kilograms, it didn't bottom out, not even on bigger road imperfections. So even on relatively worse terrain, with poorer asphalt quality, you can feel free to buy it and use it comfortably. It won't shake your hands or your house. As I said, the handlebar with this very wide backward curving design can be held very comfortably and very stably. Even if you load the bicycle, and let's say this speed of 25 to 26 kilometers per hour, which can logically be achieved and is completely safe with this handlebar, with this brake, and with this drive. Before I forgot to mention one thing which is perhaps important, that instead of the usual 27.5 or 26-inch wheels, this has 28-inch wheels. So it's not the largest 29-inch currently used, not even the smaller 27.5, but a 28-inch. The tread pattern is not specifically for asphalt, rather for mixed use. It has a tread pattern which is actually good for asphalt and also for slightly tougher terrain. So let's say on a forest road you can ride it, but don't try to take this bike on rocky terrain. Well, that's about it. I think I've said everything. I obviously wrote an article about it as well, where you'll find the coupon code and the price, so you can see how much you can get this for. To buy the bicycle, I promise I will write a good price. I promise to write such a price that makes it worth buying. So if you want a very good city bike that can safely take you from A to B without any excitement or danger, one with good performance but not consuming too much, which by Chinese standards is definitely considered good. There are components that can be called that. Then I can confidently recommend this Polluno Plus bicycle to you. And for this year, perhaps that's really it now, and there won't be more bicycles. Moreover, there might not be any other type this year, as Christmas is coming. And between the holidays, I will take a little break too. I will check in next year. Until then, be good, take care of yourselves, and happy holidays. Bye.